there's people crying in our place all the time, and it's usually tears of joy.
Yeah.
You know, but it is, you know, you see people. It's so lucky to do the work we do because there's always people hugging and crying. I always call it the joy point in crisis, when people have, you know, really starting to look at their future and you know, that moment where you've got the keys to your new place. And he was just beaming, you know, from like ear to ear by the end of the shop. And he just said he felt so spoiled. And, you know, that's, for us, how great is that for us to be able to provide that experience? You know, we are somewhat of an accidental charity. I'm originally an architect, actually, nothing to do with what I'm doing now, an architect and an artist. Advocating for people who need some support is something that I guess, you know, I was born to do. I see such unbelievable resilience and, you know, creativity on how you problem solve around this stuff. Two people in a shed 3 years ago, you know, working off of Google Sheets. I used to call Ben and one of his mates two old men in a truck, because we started doing the work ourselves because we cared more. And we created the ReLove free store, where we rescue furniture at scale from corporate relocations and from hotels. And we've got a free store for people to shop for everything that they need to furnish their new homes. Corporate volunteering, community volunteering is absolutely critical to what we do. You've got women who are, you know, taken, you know, you don't get to choose. Firstly, you don't get to choose where, you know, your housing is most of the time. So you're being taken out of your community. You may have taken your children out of the school that they know. You've already taken them away from a parent. It takes a bit more of an effort for the thinking to change, to say, well, if we really, really care about environmental and social governance, you know, maybe it is, you know, worth not just putting it into the demolition truck.
Just before we get started, if you're enjoying the podcast, can you please hit subscribe or follow? This helps me tremendously to grow my channel. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So to kick things off, we'd love to hear a bit about your background and what led you to founding ReLove. And what is ReLove? What does it do?
Yeah, so, well, I'm one of the co-founders of ReLove. ReLove, we are very much the new kids on the block in the social and environmental charity space. We are somewhat of an accidental charity. I'm originally an architect, actually, nothing to do with what I'm doing now, an architect and an artist. But ReLove is a charity that we founded really during COVID to support people who are, you know, setting up home in a time of crisis, people who just need a helping hand. And we created the ReLove free store, where we rescue furniture at scale from corporate relocations and from hotels. And we've got a free store for people to shop for everything that they need to furnish their new homes, because who knew? But when you get housing, it's empty, and it's a pretty critical piece of the pathway, you know, to move forward in your new life. You need a bed to sleep in, and you need some furniture. And yeah, we discovered during COVID that that's not really happening very, very easily. And so we thought we'd set about and try and do something about that. So yeah, we created the ReLove free store, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful organisation, very much needed, isn't it? Because these are the people in the, you know, most difficult situations or in crisis. So it's women coming out of domestic violence, people coming out of jails, and are there others as well?
Yeah. Look, you know, when we started ReLove, we were really just trying to do a short project, really, where we were trying to help 5 women come out of the crisis refuge, women who had been impacted by domestic violence, and try and help them furnish homes, you know, by asking our friends and family to come in and you know, drop off furniture, excess furniture that they had. And what we sort of discovered along the way was that, you know, five women was just the tip of the iceberg. We very quickly had, you know, a lot of requests to help other people, and we also had a lot of requests from friends and family who had a lot of furniture to give. So we set about thinking in the beginning that we were just going to try and support some women to furnish homes, but we also realised pretty quickly that it wasn't just women that needed support, and we gave it a crack and said, look, what about if we, you know, collaborate with agencies? They just refer people who need the support, and we'll just support anybody who needs that helping hand at that time. The washout of that really looks like about 75% of the people we support are women, and the remainder tend to be, you know, young people, young men and women, people coming, you know, into contact with the justice system, who are really trying to start up again. We help pretty much anybody who's referred through to us, but we do find that probably the biggest cohort of people we support are women, and that includes young women at risk and a lot of older women, and probably around 40% of the people we support come from a First Nations background. So yeah, look, that's just the washout of what happens, but we support anybody who is referred through to us.
So you started with 5, and then now you're doing, like, I think, is it 15 families or houses a week?
Yeah, we're now doing around, on average, 20 families a week, and that's over a 4-day-a-week period. We're only funded to open our doors 4 days, and yeah, that's on average 5 home relocations a day. It's a lot. We could be doing more. We want to do more. You know, there's a huge need. There's no end of people who need this critical pathway of support.
Yeah.
It's the first piece of the puzzle. You know, getting your housing is absolutely critical, and we don't do that. We work with other agencies who specialise in working with people in all their different circumstances. When we meet people, they've already got keys to their house, or they're already in housing and they're sleeping on the floor. You know, regardless of who comes through our door, most people have had some form of homelessness, or their circumstances have meant that they really have only been able to, you know, come into that new property with pretty much, you know, a few, you know, items of clothing, you know, plastic bags of clothing, or maybe a suitcase. You can't carry furniture with you. And it's a really critical piece of the puzzle to get people in a bed, and to not only just give them a bed, but give them everything that they need to start again. And that's what we do. We've got, you know, a homewares section. We've got, you know, I call it the eat, sleep, live, dine, eat homewares section. It sort of looks a little bit like an IKEA, and we've set it up very much so it feels like an authentic shopping experience, except everything is free. And, you know, it's pretty joyous, the work we get to do. It's a real privilege. It's that, I always call it the joy point in crisis, when people have, you know, really starting to look at their future, and you know, that moment where you've got the keys to your new place. You know, you might have been, you know, either, you know, sleeping on a friend's couch, or you know, you may have, you know, even been sleeping rough, or come straight out of, you know, prison. It's an exciting time when you're first getting that keys to the house, and you're picturing your future. What might this look like? And, you know, getting housing and with nothing in it, it's not the solution, because it doesn't allow people to, you know, get up in the morning and try and get to that, you know, recovery program, or try and get their kids back to school, or whatever. All of those, you know, we work with something like over 50 agencies across Sydney now, charities, who are providing this critical pathway of support. And there's so many amazing programs that our partners provide, but without a safe home, they don't, it's very difficult for people to turn up for their mentoring program or their education program or any of those amazing therapeutic wraparound services that our partner agencies provide. This piece of the puzzle needs to happen first. And then people have time to rest, heal, and recover. And, that next step is going into those employment programs and all those other things that are out there. Yeah, but we need to get this piece of the puzzle sorted first.
Yeah, it's really key, isn't it? I mean, you can't be sleeping rough on the street and then going and applying for jobs or going into programs or you got a family that's escaped domestic violence and they're just held up at a refuge, and this must make such a huge difference having their actual place. And like you said, going into an empty place is no good either. And usually they don't have the resources to buy furniture or to fill it up. And I guess it gives them a lot of, I guess, like dignity as well, because they have their own place and the furniture, and then that's just like a base start. So that would even help, like even people coming out of prisons, I imagine that, they're less likely to offend if they have a bit of a base set up, and then from there they can look for work and feel better about themselves. Otherwise, if they're like back on the street or whatever, then they're more likely to fall back into committing offences, I guess.
Yeah, it's all of those problems, and you're putting people in impossible situations.
Yeah.
You're asking people to, on average, it takes 7 to 8 times for a woman to leave her partner, her violent partner. And one of the biggest, critical pathways is that you're actually asking people to choose between living in fear and poverty, and getting a home with nothing in it. That's just not. You've got women who are, taken. You don't get to choose. Firstly, you don't get to choose where your housing is most of the time. So you're being taken out of your community. You may have taken your children out of the school that they know. You've already taken them away from a parent, and you may be out of the complete area that and you're starting again. And you've got to try new schools. You might have to try a whole new job, and none of that's possible when you don't have the simple things like, a chest of drawers to put your clothes away. Social housing often doesn't have built-in wardrobes.
Yeah.
They're things that we take for granted, and you need a lot of stuff to be able to create a safe home. On average, when people come through to us, they're shopping for everything, and it's down to the artwork, those really beautiful things that make it feel like it's your place. And we're giving people on average, $10,000 to $15,000 worth of material aid. And this is all furniture, apart from the social impact, the environmental impact of what we're doing is enormous as well. It's thousands of tons of furniture that's being diverted from landfill, really good quality stuff.
Yeah.
And, because of where we're getting it from, which is primarily coming out of, hotel defects and corporate relocations. And then from all those other great places like property stylists and film sets and the community, the majority of our furniture is commercial grade furniture. So it's going to last for a long time. And if there's a lot of ways that, people can, it's not that it's not happening out there. Of course, there are programs that have been put into place to support people at that time. We have, a domestic violence payment at $5,000, but only $1,500 of that's allowed to be used on furniture and homewares.
Yes.
And only at certain prescriptive places, Amart and Kmart and IKEA. And, a lot of that furniture, it's not enough. Firstly, it's not enough. $1,500 doesn't help you furnish a whole home.
No.
And, second, it's more likely to be entry grade commercial furniture. So entry grade residential furniture. So, most of the people that come through our doors, they're going into transitional housing. So it's 3 to 12 to 18 months. And then they're going to move again. So you kind of want to be able to, once they walk through our door, we've given them, $10,000 to $15,000 worth of stuff. And they're taking that stuff with them, and they're taking stuff with them that's more likely to last for a longer time as well. It's a really, really important thing to be able to have good quality stuff that's going to last you for a while as well.
Yeah, the furniture has to be more than fantastic, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, mind you, Fantastic Furniture is making some great furniture at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
So,
I was just saying,
yeah,
man, fantastic furniture. It's just furniture that's fantastic. So I'm
yeah,
sure they're getting a lot more.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah,
yeah. And so, like, with domestic violence is a huge problem. This has been for many years, obviously, and
mm,
I think during COVID it really increased a lot. I mean, did you start during COVID? And
yeah,
what did you see in that time? And because women, I guess, was even harder. Women like were more stuck where they were. It must have been
yeah.
terrible for those women in those situations during
Yeah,
that.
that's right. And really, ReLove was born out of that moment where we had been at the time. My co-founder and I, Ben and I, actually were running a running group. Had nothing to do with what we're doing now. And we were running social good projects. It was free running training, and we were just asking people that were training with us to get involved with projects that we created, which the focus was on practical ways of giving back.
Mhm.
And along the way, COVID happened, and we couldn't actually run as a group. You could only leave the house with one other person at the
Yeah,
time. It was a
yeah.
pretty, strange time. But, at that time, we'd already been working with a fantastic organisation called the Women and Girls Emergency Centre, and we'd been running a project with them, which was around Mother's Day, and that had taken Ben and I out to one of the refuges,
Mhm.
and I'd personally never walked into a women's refuge before. This is a really large. I mean, they're a fantastic organisation, but you've got women living together in trauma,
Yeah.
and women and children. This is one of their really big refuges, and we Ben and I, jumped in the car, and we were quite profoundly affected, and we started to talk to the CEO, who has become a good friend of mine, Helen Sylvia, and ask what were all the barriers there, and some of the things that were happening at that time were that while there was still access to housing, I mean, there was a huge, the refuge was full, and it was really difficult. There were so many layers of problems of at the time, when transitional housing had, which is really one of the biggest avenues that people come out of crisis refuge into this transitional program. They'd had their times extended. We had people that had been sleeping rough were now in hotels. There was a whole bunch of stuff happening, but there was effectively a sort of backlog where you, even if you could get into housing, there wasn't really any way to set up a home. And we thought, well, this is COVID, and here are people doing the great COVID spring clean, being bored and at home, and I live in the eastern suburbs, and Ben lives in the North Shore, and affluent suburbs, and we just saw great quality furniture going out into the sidewalk, and I call that the high quality loot days, where I couldn't, people were just changing their furniture because you're at home
Mhm.
constantly, right? Like,
Yeah,
today
yeah.
I want a yellow sofa, tomorrow I want a green one, like whatever it
Sure.
might be. And I'm originally an architect, and trained in sustainability. I mean, it wasn't even called sustainability back then, but it just seemed like a pretty obvious thing. Here's this good stuff going out to the sidewalk, and here we have people who need it. So, we came up with a project. We called it the Heart and the Home Project, and we
Okay.
called on our friends and family and said, bring in stuff. We borrowed some warehouse space, and we thought we'd set up five women, and very quickly the demand kept coming. Could you set up another family? And in
Yeah,
the first few months, we set up around 50 families, and then we started to ask the question, hold on for a minute, what's going on here? Is this just a COVID thing? And
yeah.
3 years later, we know it's not. We've rehomed, upwards of 1,700 families now, and we've got a 2,000 square meter warehouse full of furniture, and 20 families a week. It's a lot of furniture we're turning over every week. And there's no end of furniture, and there's no end of people who need it. We just need to be able to crack this model so we can keep doing the work we're doing, and maintain what we're doing, and scale what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, that moment where you went into that women's shelter, is that your co-founder Ben? Did you say, or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah? So when you went
yeah.
into the women's shelter with Ben, it obviously impacted you so much that
Yeah.
that's what drove you to. But what is it maybe earlier on in your life or something in your life that is part of you that actually, because a lot of people could go into that shelter and feel, really sorry for them and walk out and, forget it the next day. So
Yeah.
what is it in your life or in your formative years or something that you think has driven you to have this drive to help all these people in need?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. Look, I think it's always a accumulation of a whole lot of things, and just being in the right time, right place, right time, to be able to bring all of those those moments together. And both Ben and I are definitely hardwired for empathy, and I mean I can't speak on his behalf of why, but I definitely know. I personally have, firsthand lived experience of, a family member who had acute mental health, and, really needed, somebody to advocate for them. My mother has, had mental health for all of her life. And,
Mm.
we just grew up knowing that that's part of what you do. You advocate for people because our mental health system, we are lucky in this country to have the health system that we have, but
Yeah.
mental health is really difficult, and you really need someone advocating for you in that space, because you can't have somebody. I personally had to section my mother several times. And
That's
yeah, but the fact that I could do that, it
yeah.
meant that she was able to get the care that she needed, and to
Mhm.
get the right medication that she needed. And that was obviously a lifetime ongoing challenge. But yeah, advocating for people who need some support is something that I guess I was born to do. And both my parents are first generation immigrants. They're both from Sri Lanka. They came here in 1966 under the White Australia policy. My dad came to teach medicine here, and my mum opened the very first Sri Lankan restaurant in this country. And I was a little kid, doing their homework, go to get your takeaway. And, like when coming from Sri Lanka, it's a really different way of being brought up than coming, being brought up in Australia. And, we went to Sri Lanka every year when we were kids,
Mhm.
almost every year. And I guess I hadn't really appreciated till I was older that informs how you think about the world. You understand when you go to, when your family's from a third world country, that we are very lucky here. And it I guess it just made me always understand that being able to have a proper education. And of course we were the Sri Lankan kids that got pushed to do well at school. And but our parents really made us understand that we are lucky to live in this country. And yeah, my parents were always helping people. We always had somebody living with us, helping them get set up. And yeah, it was just an environment we grew up in.
So that's wonderful. Yeah, you see it like you have a whole different perspective when you like, even if you go to a third world country, I find you come back to Australia and it's like, oh, we're so lucky here.
Mm.
And so growing up with someone with mental health, I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of families going through that, a lot of people with mental health issues. And now it's much more widely recognized. There's a lot more help out there, which is fantastic. And I've interviewed a few other founders that are in that space and helping in that space as well. And including, because you're what's called a snow entrepreneur from the Snow
Yes, I am.
Foundation, which is nothing about skiing, but you might want to tell us just briefly about that. But also, I think it's PR, and I can't remember the last name right now, but she's involved helping people with addiction problems
Yep,
as
Clean
well,
Slate
which is
Clinic.
wonderful.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. And I interviewed Tony Roffico, so he's also
You're going
helping
through all of us.
youth. Well, you three. There's the three of you. So, because I'm always really keen on people that are in the the space, social impact, etc. That's really and look, I believe with someone with mental health issues as well, and a lot of that could also lead to addiction problems as well. And that
Yeah,
whole space is so complicated and so difficult. And when you have a lived experience, it's very different, isn't it? Then you really
yeah.
will understand other people with those type of issues and much more inclined to try and help them, like in your
Yeah,
case. Yeah.
absolutely. And I really think, we do our absolute best, and it's always a challenge. We are always learning. Like this work we do teaches us constantly. We're always faced with, you know, challenging our own subconscious biases.
Mm. Hmm.
I've learnt so much by some of them. We often refer to people as vulnerable people in our society, and I try not to use that terminology, because one thing that I've learned is that some of the people that walk through our door are constantly teaching us, how people can overcome these real heavy challenges. And I totally can understand sometimes, if you're turning to drugs and alcohol, you know there's reasons for that. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not for any other, I feel like there's only so much people can be expected to deal with, and some people just never get a break. It's,
Yeah.
from childhood trauma all the way through to adulthood. It's these, we talk about, First Nations, challenges of intergenerational trauma. We see it all the time. How can you break these systems, without, real support and community around you? It's people. I don't think about it as vulnerability. I see such unbelievable resilience and, creativity on how you problem solve around this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we had a guy who actually worked for us. We supported him, but we ended up employing him. And when we first met him, he used to go fishing off in the harbour. He'd go fishing, and then he'd take his catch into Chinatown, and he'd give the Chinese restaurant the fish, and they would feed him. That's pretty resilient, and that's pretty creative.
That is,
That's not
that
somebody
is.
I'm calling vulnerable. I mean, I
Mhm.
guess there's this. I
Yeah.
understand the intent of that word,
Yeah.
but yeah, real resilience, and it's teaching us all the time, how do people survive through some of these long drawn out challenges.
Yeah.
We have such
Yeah.
respect for people when they walk through our door.
Yeah.
And it's just a joyous moment for us too, right? To be able to
Yeah.
say, great,
Yeah.
gosh, thank you for the privilege for letting us help you at this point,
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Like, um, there's even a lot of research now, but I mean, for me, it's pretty obvious. Like, you know, maintaining a good mental health is having a good purpose as well, and
Yeah.
helping others. Helping others is the number one thing, actually, to have to be happy. So,
Yeah.
like no one's ever, happy all the time in this life. That's not real. But to have like that sort of joy and that satisfaction, if you're helping others, a lot of people are depressed and not feeling well because they're too focused on themselves. But if they start looking at others and helping others, like
Yeah.
in your case, all of that can go because you've got purpose, you're helping others, and it gives you a huge satisfaction.
Oh, of course, as Ben and I started this, we've run this as volunteers, and I think people, often say to us, "Oh, how are you continuing to do it?" But you only need to walk alongside somebody, in a morning. I mean, yesterday I had a young guy in who he was so excited. He came in really early for his shopping appointment, and he was just beaming, from like ear to ear by the end of the shop. And he just said he felt so spoiled. And, that's for us. How great is that for us to be able to provide that experience? We had this, I often say there's a million stories that happen under our roof, and it's always about human connection. That's the really purposeful part of what we do. We bring people together under our roof and connect people at the same, in this, there's people crying at our place all the time. And it's usually tears of joy.
Yeah.
But it is, you see people, it's so lucky to do the work we do, because there's always people hugging and crying. I had been working, I'd been talking to a girl who's actually an author, and I said to her, I'd love you to come and, write some stories. And we've been sitting upstairs talking, and I told her that. I said, look, there's a million unbelievable stories here. And we walked downstairs, and as we walked downstairs, there was a client who was just finishing off her pick. And one of the things I usually ask our clients when they've finished their shopping appointment is, what's your favourite thing? Because I love hearing what somebody's got excited about, whether it's a rug that looks like a yellow rug that looks like a piece of sunshine, or, there's all these kind of descriptive terms that people tell us, the thing that they're excited about. And, this beautiful lady said to me, she was picking up a brand new, but it was just excess stock, Philips steam iron. And she said, I just can't wait. I love ironing my jeans. I even iron my socks. And I said to her, again, I wasn't probably thinking the whole question through. I was just talking, and I said, do you iron your sheets? And she said, well, I will now. And I said to her, okay, but normally I ask people what your favourite thing is. Pretty obvious it's your iron. What's your next favourite thing? Just tell me what your next favourite. And she said, well, it's my ironing board, obviously. And then about half an hour later, we had her caseworker drop us an email saying, thank you so much. She cried all the way home because it reminded her of a time when she was sleeping rough, and all she had to keep warm was an ironing board cover. And now she had not only the iron and the ironing board cover, she had an entire home. And, who are we to know that an iron's going to bring someone joy?
That is amazing and beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
And you must have so many of them.
Yeah, really. It's what keeps us going. To be honest, sometimes, Ben and I are obviously really at that point now that we're really trying to build a team around us. And, there's a little office upstairs, and sometimes we just go downstairs to be with the clients, because that's the stuff that motivates you to get up every day and work that hard to do it, because you see the immediate effect. And because we're working directly with people who are coming through to get assistance, it's really absolutely purposeful work. You can see how fast this immediate support is changing people's demeanour and changing their moment of, this is the moment where they're seeing, a possible different future. And can I just tell you one more story? Because I love this. It is one of the things that motivated me, and really I think about often. I mean, there's many, but I met a client one time who, this is a while ago, and she had actually her particular circumstance, and just let me tell you this, that we never ask people's stories. It's really important that when people walk through our door, they never, ever have to retell their story, because that's asking people to relive their trauma. Exactly. So we never do that. Yeah. But, we often have clients who are, sharing their stories because they want to be talking about where they've been and what's happening. And in this particular woman's story, she'd had to escape from a different state. And that moment was a really long journey between the time she left. She was the breadwinner. She was working full time. She had a 4-year-old child, and she had to leave very, very suddenly. Her partner was out. She'd been through some. She knew that she'd had a partner who had always been emotionally and financially controlling. But, when this particular incident happened for her, she packed a car in the middle of the night and she jumped in the car and she spent, days driving to Sydney and, sleeping with a baby. And then finally, long, period where you get into crisis refuge, you retell your story. And she was finally given some housing. And, that moment when she met us, her daughter had gone to daycare and she came through our doors and we were helping her, choose everything. And the way the warehouse is set up is we meet them in the homeware section and then we walk them through to the very end, and you choose your bed and then you choose your sofa. And once you've chosen the colour of your sofa, then you can match your chairs. And it's sort of a whole process to bring you slowly through the journey. And then you get the good stuff with matching the cushions and the artwork and all that stuff. And halfway through the warehouse, she was literally skipping. Like she skipped through the warehouse and she turned up so nervous. And that afternoon, we found out, because we'd been talking, that she was on the floor. And, we find this all the time. When we find somebody sleeping on the floor, we try and get there. We'll change all our scheduling so we can try and get a bed to them that very day. But in her situation, we managed to get the entire home set up before her daughter came back from school.
Oh.
And she was, her baby had gone to school, and when she came back, she actually filmed her coming through the door, and showing her a new home. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. We were all just in tears. The joyous moment where her daughter was putting her hands over her eyes, and Mum was saying, "It's your new bedroom. It's your first bedroom." And she opens the door and she's jumping on a bed and opening up all the drawers, and that's just amazing. It feels like it's just furniture, but it's not. It's a home, and it's letting people go, okay, now I've got home, now I can start to rebuild.
Yeah.
Home is so important.
It's changing the direction of people's lives, like you're giving them a leg up and then they can do a lot more. It's like giving them a real basis. On this show, like, it's called Fail Wisdom Podcast because, startups are really hard. There's a lot of failures and, I know firsthand about that. So my podcast is not just about all success stories. It's about, learning from failures. I love to hear the successes. It's wonderful. But, how do people define success? So for me, success is going on the journey, learning, growing, and then if you can do something that makes a difference in others' lives. So I would define what you're doing as the ultimate successful startup, personally, rather than, let's say, look at a startup that makes $1 billion or whatever. I mean, if it's in a good space and it's helping, fantastic. But, people have a funny idea of success. But I personally would define what you're doing as highly successful. What are your thoughts?
Well, we're not there yet.
It depends.
There's still a lot of challenges, but
the journey
has been fast, huge, very challenging, highly satisfying.
So let's talk about those challenges you went through, and then what you learned from that, and what advice you can give to other startup founders that are going to be coming through that same sort of space.
Yeah. I think not coming from this background, firstly, it's very lucky to have a co-founder. Having a co-founder who thinks differently, we think very differently to each other. I'm a creative person. I'm an artist and an architect by profession, and Ben, is an investment banker, and we have different ways of thinking about stuff, but we definitely meet in the heart place. And what we've been able to do as co-founders really is change what we do as we see challenges. So we're learning along the way. We didn't know anything about this space. I mean, I was shocked that there was this I just presumed when you got housing, there's something in it, you know, and so we're learning along the way, you know, and because every time we see challenges, being able to have a fast way of responding. We're not you know, laden down with red tape at this point. We're constantly, you know, on my t-shirt, it's the first word on a card says rethink. We're constantly rethinking how we do things, and that the luck of that means that, you know, every time we see something, we try something and we go, oh no, that's, you know, that could work better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't know that we were going to have a shop that people could come and choose stuff.
No.
You know, that wasn't what we thought we were doing. You know,
Yeah, you
the
got to be
first
so
thing when
adaptable, that's you, like, as a startup, you got to adapt to the situation all the time, constantly changing.
Yeah, constantly. And, you know, we didn't, you know, we were two people in a shed 3 years ago, you know, working off of Google Sheets so that, you know, caseworkers could go on, look at the picture and say, can we give my client, you know, and pick what they needed. And, you know, what we thought we were going to do is totally different to what we're doing today, because every time, you know, in the beginning, agencies were sending removalists. Here's a perfect example. Here we were in this very small shed warehouse, and you know, removalists were turning up to pick up the furniture that the caseworkers had selected, and driving that to the clients. Now, we worked out pretty quickly that, firstly, they don't turn up on time. They're not as invested in that person as we are. And, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're, you know, they're just putting the furniture in. You know, if you're a mum and you're about to give birth, and we have worked with so many women who are about to give birth, or they're wrangling toddlers, and you need your furniture to be put in place. You know, we changed our whole system so that we started doing the deliveries. Yeah. Who knew that we'd be delivery people? I used to call Ben and one of his mates two old men in a truck, because we started doing the work ourselves because we cared more, and then we're working more directly with the client, and then we're putting the beds into place, and we're making the beds. You know, think about how traumatic it is when you're trying to move full stop. Yeah. Let alone here you are with lots of children, and you know, you've got so much stuff going on. It's really hard to even make a decision, let alone, you know, put everything away in cupboards and make, you know, we do all of that now, because we started, every time we saw a challenge, we went, well, why don't we do that? We care more about that. And then now we've got a delivery team. So we put all our funding into, you know, because we've been a volunteer-run organisation, and, you know, volunteer-run organisations, we probably had 1,600 volunteers turn up last year to help us make the wheels turn. Corporate volunteering, community volunteering, and volunteering is absolutely critical to what we do. But, you know, if you've only got a volunteer workforce, you don't have a reliable workforce. So then we worked out, well, we need to pay our own guys. You know, we've got an incredible group of young men who are trained removalists now, and I call them the Band of Brazilian Brothers. Seems to be a theme. And but it hasn't only been that, mind you. We've got some amazing community volunteers who are still on the trucks and vans weekly. And, you know, but we wanted to make sure that when people walk through our door, we're not going to let them down. We're not going to say we're going to move you and then our volunteers, you know, or we've asked a, you know, corporate volunteering team to turn up and they haven't turned up because work's busy. And that happens all the time, and we understand it. But we don't want people to be, you know, so excited. You're about to get all your stuff, about to start sleep in a bed tonight, and we can't turn up. So we have to change every time we see new challenges, and you know, that's by learning what doesn't work. So that's how, you know, the ReLove free shopping experience, moving experience, the whole things come to be, and why it needs to be free as well, because, you know, it's really important that it removes all the barriers when you make everything free. It doesn't remove the barriers for us to work out how to fund ReLove, but you know, for that person that we're ultimately driven to support, everything needs to be free.
Yeah.
because they need all of that stuff at that time.
And
So,
so
yeah.
tell us about, well, everything's free, so obviously you need the funding, the volunteers and all that. So how do you organize all of that, and how did you go about that? And did you have any issues with that, like getting so many volunteers and getting the funding? What sort of funding did you get, and what sort of ongoing funding do you have?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really tough. So
Hmm.
once again, we're constantly changing what we do. I mean, you referred to the Snow Foundation, who have, come on board to help us and really support us really in much more than just a financial sense. They're helping us with a whole lot of other stuff, which is wraparound support that we need, that Ben and I personally need. We need we've just done a business diagnostic with them, and then they're helping us with mentorship, and there's a lot of stuff that we need to learn about, stuff we don't know about.
Yeah.
I don't we don't have a business plan at the moment.
Yeah.
It's sort of chicken and egg. So yep, we've got our funding comes from a multiple range of sources. We wouldn't have got this off the ground had we not had friends and family support us. Ben and I joke that, every time we get invited to a dinner party, we're asking people for money. So maybe we're not the best company, but we're not asking for ourselves. We're
Yeah.
asking so that we can get,
Yeah.
one thing I think we've done pretty well is mobilise our community. So we've sort of got a diversified stream of funding from some foundations, private family, friends and family foundations has been a really critical piece of the puzzle for us. And, our foundation partner Built, which is a construction company, came on board. Really we wouldn't have been able to get this far without the free warehousing for the first couple of years. And, being able to prove that the model really needed to exist. We had sort of 2 years of shacking up with on whatever free warehouse space they had, and until we really had to step out on our own and raise enough money to be able to pay, what is arguably the biggest part of our funding problem is warehouse. And that funding really has come from all those different sources: private philanthropy, corporate foundations getting on board, friends and family. But recently we've come up with an idea which we think is going to help us a lot, and that is that we not only take furniture for that goes straight into the ReLove free store for our clients, which is obviously our first and foremost priority. But often we're taking out of corporate relocations really high-end designer furniture. And so now we've started, it's just gone live, and it is called the ReLove Shop for Good. And we're selling some of those higher end design pieces that come primarily out of the corporate relocations, to be honest. Most hotel furniture is just going straight into houses. And yeah, you can jump online and have a look at that. We've got a little bit of revenue stream coming through that. And we think by partnering with some of these organisations that do sort of commercial defits, we are circular economy in action. A lot of companies need environmental and social governance, and that's us in a nutshell. That's what we do. We're really practical circular economy. We're putting together an environmental solution to a social problem, and it meets a lot of people's requirements, from if you're just donating furniture or if you need support. It's really bringing it all together under one roof. And so we're really hoping that, if we can kick this furniture store off, we need some staff to run it. People don't realise that, service delivery is important for charities. I never knew, because I didn't think about it, but you can't run programs without a staff member to run it.
Yeah.
At the moment, we're all volunteers, and, even corporate volunteering, I didn't know, but, corporate volunteering is absolutely critical for us to get people in the door to understand the problem that we're trying to solve, the environmental and the social problem.
Yeah.
But, there's resistance when you say to people, oh, but, corporate volunteering, we ask for you not only to bring your staff, but to pay. Some organisations just get it. They know that that's part and parcel, because we have to entertain these people when they walk through the door.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to educate them.
Yeah.
You've got to set them out. You've got to make sure they're safe. We were originally using people to go and move furniture. Now that's not safe. So we have to pay our staff to be able to make sure that when corporate volunteers walk through the door, they're safe, so that they don't have to lift furniture. They just get to come in and be part of the experience and make beds. And, it's pretty profound. Our volunteering experience, I think people don't come away unaffected. I think, that's what we're really trying to achieve here. We're really trying to make sure when people walk through the doors, they walk away understanding that every single one of us can make a difference. We can all help in ways that can profoundly affect somebody's, pathway. But there's a lot of challenges there. And the other part I should mention is that the moving service that we do, that is paid through the charity funding. The charities, look, there's lots of different challenges there too, but we do charge a sort of low bono rate to do the moves, and that's usually coming from government brokerage that the charities could get access to. But some charities just understand it, and they understand that we can't do everything for free. We need to pay some staff, and they work out how they find funding so that they can pay for those. Furniture needs to be moved. It's not clothes.
No,
it's big bulky items that need to come upstairs and put into place, and it's a critical, piece that we need to have funded so that we can do that work.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of non-profits or social enterprises that they do one type of work and then they do something else related to that to fund that, because constantly getting funding and volunteers, I guess, can be difficult and tiring. So there's another slow founder that is involved with human rights. So set up an organization that can, look at what's going on with human rights for country by country, whereas at the moment it's just worldwide. So she set that up. It's a not-for-profit as well. And then now she's set up something whereby people can actually buy those statistics and that information, like journalists, that sort of thing. So that's to help, to fund the other as well. So there's a lot of, I think, organizations, charities, not-for-profits that will look at, I think at some stage you've got to look at, okay, where else can I bring in some funding? So slightly commercialized to support it, which I think is fine. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, that's what we're trying to do as well, and because, we're only 3 years into this. We've only been ReLove for 2 years, and we worked out quickly that we've got to find our own way of creating some income. Hence, the moving fees are in place, and then also this furniture store, the Shop for Good.
Yeah.
We again bumped into it and went, oh, that makes sense. We were given something like 160 office chairs, Herman Miller, Aeron office chairs. I don't know if you know what they are, but let's just say they're very expensive. And while at the time it was during COVID, and we were making sure that the first thing was that we were setting up lots of desks and chairs in people's homes, because that was during that time. But as that started to alleviate, we still sort of had 100 of these chairs left over. And one afternoon, one of our volunteers said, like, why don't I try and sell them, and I'll put them on Facebook Marketplace. And she did a stellar job. And in the afternoon, one day, we didn't know, but in one day, we sold 100 chairs and made $50,000.
Wow!
Now I can pay for a new removalist. So it makes sense. Of course, that's only happened once.
Yeah.
But what we started to do was look at, sometimes, corporates are the last part of solving a job is furniture. Where does the furniture go? And it's much easier for a corporate to just put it in landfill. But it takes a bit more of an effort for the thinking to change, to say, well, if we really, really care about environmental and social governance, maybe it is, worth not just putting it into the demolition truck. Why don't we put it into a removals truck and bring it to ReLove?
You'd think
And
so, wouldn't you? Like,
you'd
most
think so.
sense. Yeah.
And a lot of people are rising to that.
Yeah.
But, we still, haven't quite, the environmental circular economy conversation needs to change a bit. And we're really happy it's happening. And
Yeah.
there's some incredible initiatives here. And we're riding off the back of that. But, we get out of bed for the social change.
Yeah.
There's no measurement on social change that seems impactful to corporates yet, whereas there are, environmental pressures, carbon embodied carbon reporting. There's a few of those things which we see are changing the dialogue a bit, which is great. But it's $430 a tonne to put furniture into landfill. We have 2.5 million tonnes of furniture heading into landfill every year. And, you don't need to be a scientist to work out how long is it going to take for a piece of furniture to deteriorate. Of course, when we were working with the Commonwealth Bank, we did, they were doing an 80,000 square metre defit, and we worked really closely with them. They are really leading in that space of working out how to, dispose of all their furniture in the most responsible ways. And that's when we got involved. And, I think we took something like, 25% of their loose furniture. And it's just about thinking about things differently, right?
Yeah.
Like a small meeting room table is perfect for social housing. It goes up. It's just the right size. People want to donate 6 to 8 person dining tables. And they don't go into people's houses very often. So now we can also say to people, look, we're happy to take all of that stuff that you want to donate. And if you want to donate the 8-person dining table, if you're happy for us to sell it, 100% of the profits is going back just to support the people that, we're supporting. Our metric is roughly, it costs us around $500 to set up a family with $10,000 to $15,000 worth of material aid.
Yeah.
But we just got to get people understanding that it takes all of us. We can't just, people think once they're talking to a charity, we're trying to get people to understand that we're also an environmental service rather than just thinking about it as a charity. No, we can't just drop everything and go and pick it up. We're asking people to mobilise together, get it to us, and then we're going to make sure that we're getting it to the people who need it. And that's when we're collaborating really well, when we're all doing part of the process. And sometimes I'm surprised at some of the organisations who are big and also, have the capacity to get it to us, who are still saying, oh, no, if you're not going to pick it up, we can't work with you. I mean, we're talking about, really wealthy corporates who should be able to take that responsibility on and to get it to us, because then we're ensuring we're changing, stuff at a grassroots level.
Absolutely. If there's anyone working for those big corporates, get onto your CEOs and your bosses and tell them about ReLove and the good work they're doing. It can make such a difference.
Yeah.
Now, Ren, there's not that many women in the startup space, and I've spoke to quite a few of them, and I know for a start, funding is really difficult when you're a woman, but in your case, your partner is actually investment banker, did you say?
Yeah.
So I guess that would help. But I think women only get 4% of funding or like investment money in the startup world. And also, often women say it's a lot more difficult to be a startup founder. What's been your experience, and what sort of advice can you give to other women startup founders?
Yeah, you know, I've heard those statistics too. And, I don't know if I've got enough perspective on it to know if that's been informing where we're at. Um, you know, we're we're really a charity first and foremost. We haven't, we don't have a product for people to invest in as
Yeah.
such. So I guess we're not exposed to that at this point. Our view on trying to get this furniture store up and running really is so that we want the majority of our funding to go directly back into doing the work that we do. At the moment, everything that we make, 100% is going back into, 100% of the profits going back into doing the work we do. So we're doing both parts of that. So yeah, I don't know if I've got a perspective on that in terms of investment. I think it's been interesting that we are. I think there is actually, on the flip side, an advantage of being a woman in this space. I have been talking to a lot of designers, interior designers. The statistic on interior design is that 80% of interior designers are women.
Right.
It's been really interesting, even just looking at who follows us on social media, even. And I am an old dog learning new tricks, so
Mhm.
it's not like I'm great at social media, but we give it a go. But something like 87% of the people that follow ReLove are women, and
Wow.
it's interesting that for me it feels like on the positive side, we've got women solving problems for women. And it's not exclusively women that we're working with, of course, but I was laughing with one of my other friends from the Snow Foundation on the Snow Entrepreneur Program that this was my first rodeo of International Women's Day. It was exhausting, but what it did allow us to do was, I was speaking at a whole range of events. I think we did something like 8 to 10 events
Nice.
during International. It's not International Women's Day, by the way. It's International Women's Day month. But
Okay.
that actually gave us the platform to speak about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that's a positive flip side of it, that we're invited to talk about what we're doing. And yeah, so look, I don't really know if it's a negative experience for us.
Okay.
I think it's kind of not bad being a woman in this space, personally.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. So, but some people will say that women generally are more empathetic. So I don't know if that's true, but most.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I would say I think Ben's got a huge heart. Often we're trying to, it's difficult for us to say no,
Mm,
because we want to say yes to everything,
yeah.
but we
Yeah.
can't say yes to everything.
No. No.
And often we're debating things and we're like, no, we actually can't say yes to that. We have to
Yeah.
say no sometimes. That's hard for us because I think we really are both very hardwired for empathy.
Something that annoyed me a bit was during the pandemic, the government housed, most of the homeless people, right?
Mm,
So I thought, and then when the pandemic finished, like, okay, off you go, back on the street. Like, if they can do that during the pandemic, why can't
mm.
they do that after the pandemic? It would help so many people.
Yeah, look, there's so many levels of problems here, from, the availability of housing. And when we talk about housing, if you're, listening to any current media, there's a lot of discussion about the lack
Yeah,
of social housing and the lack of affordable housing.
yeah,
Yeah, that is a huge problem. And, I guess during the pandemic, the hotels were empty, so there
mm,
was places for people to go.
yeah,
But, you know, I guess what we're talking about is when people walk through our doors, they've got housing.
yeah,
Housing's not just housing is a piece of the puzzle, but you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's only the first step. And a roof over your head's not a home, and you can't break the cycles. You can't stay in that home if you don't, have everything that you need to be able
Yeah.
to walk away from the situation that you've come from. And then often people are, it's a cycle then, right? And you're going back into the situation that you've come from, or it's all of the above. I think at the time, the fact that the hotels were empty did help, but yeah, we are sort of, it does seem
Yeah.
to be that we're moving forwards. It's just that we're not moving fast enough.
Yeah.
We're always in a hurry to move faster.
Well, you're making a huge contribution towards that, so which is wonderful. So, what's next for Ren?
Yeah, look, well, we are, in terms of what we're doing, we're really trying to build a team around us that will change our life. We've actually just employed a new operations, we call it the community operations manager, who completely by coincidence happens to be my cousin. So we've got another Fernando involved. We're trying to build a team around us. We have to move warehouse. That's been a huge challenge. Warehouse, which is it's an absolute no-brainer that you need a warehouse if you're going to do this work. But nobody wants to fund a warehouse. Nobody wants to. It's not that's not sexy. Funding is our biggest challenge here. To be able to maintain what we're doing and grow what we're doing. We've got some amazing, I would call them partners, the Judith Neilson Foundation, the Snow Foundation, some friends and families, private ancillary fund foundations that are on board with us. And of course, Built is on board. We've got a few other, corporates. The people who seem to be on board with us really are, on the journey with us, but we need to get more funding so that we can build a team around us because Ben and I are pretty ambitious. We had a pilot program in Melbourne and we piloted a program in Brisbane during the floods, and we know what we're doing is needed everywhere. We just want Sydney to be humming, and that just takes some. If somebody could just fund our warehouse, we'd be in a very
If
different
someone's
situation.
listening, you never know. Like if there's a corporate out there or someone that can fund that, or a wealthy individual,
Yeah.
why not?
And look, we've made the choice to reduce the pressure of the funding by moving to a smaller warehouse. Unfortunately, when we moved into the warehouse that we're currently in, it was a 2-year sublease. The current rents are, almost double. So in September, our lease is up, and we're going from, something like 570,000 a year rent to 900,000 a year rent for the same location. That's just market pressures. And we probably spent close to 6 months searching for a warehouse, and we've investigated moving different areas. We've really, really dug deep on this one, and we've actually we're really backing ourselves to. We're currently just signed our heads of agreement. It's pretty exciting into our new warehouse, which is going to be smaller, but it's in Alexandria. Which means that we didn't really have to. We don't have to change our model. We sort of worked out that if we go far away, that's not where our clients are. That's not where our community volunteers are. That's not where our our local donations are coming from. It would have really been a really difficult change for us, and we've got momentum now, and we're constantly solving in different ways. This new warehouse, it's an empty shell, so we can rack it as we like. We can make it more efficient. We can still keep all the really good stuff, the free shopping experience alive. We can do that by planning it differently. And because now we've got 20 families a week, we can actually work in a smaller space. And when we do get those times, like right now, we're about to take one of the hotels, Toga Hotel Group, has been really, working with us to, when they're doing defitting, to get us as much furniture out of theirs defits rather than sending it to landfill. And we're about to do a Dina Town Hall with them. They get the furniture to us. It's something like 450 bedside tables, 100 sofas. That's the scale of furniture that we can take. And, if we get to the point where it's too much at the time, we're going to, we're working with another model of putting it into shipping containers and leaving it somewhere else until we can bring it in. And all of these system changes, we've had to rebuild our inventory management system this year so that we can accommodate that, so we can have multiple warehousing options.
Yeah.
We think that we just have to be nimble and we have to change according to what we can afford to do. While it's going into a smaller warehouse, it's cheaper, so we're saving money anyway. Look, who knows? Yeah. As we grow, I think the reality is we're just going to need some support to be able to have greater storage in the future.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that you'll get more and more support as you go, because the work you're doing is so important. So just to finish off, Ren, if you could give one piece of advice to an early stage startup founder, particularly in your space, what would it be?
One piece of advice. I genuinely think have a co-founder. I think that would be my one piece of advice.
Okay.
This has been hard, and having a co-founder that, no matter how tough the discussions get, you're going to see things differently, and have a co-founder who thinks differently than you do.
Yeah.
Because then you've got we have very rigorous discussions, I would say. But we have the ability, because we so believe in what we do and we have such deep respect for each other, that, even if those conversations get hard, we know that we're in it together. And I often I have some wonderful friends who are single founders doing this really front-facing, on the coalface work, who are doing incredible work, and there's so much of that out there. And I just think, gosh, how do you do it by yourself? That's so hard. I wouldn't be able to do this by myself. The skill set that Ben brings to the table is so different to the skill set that I bring.
Yeah.
And we actually did one of those, the sort of personality tests kind of thing, and we did this analysis, and it looked at how your brains work, and if you and it's sort of a whole brain test, and if you put the two pieces of paper up against a window, we've got a whole brain. I'm hugely creative. I leave the circle. I'm off the charts with creative divergent thinking, and he's the absolute mirror opposite.
That's what you need.
Detail and structure, and
it's funny. It's very similar
finance
to myself and my co-founder. She was very much like yours, and I was very much like you. And you feel that sort of support. Like you said, it's so important. But depends on the personality. Some people, they're fine doing it by themselves, So it depends on everyone. But I found the same as you. Like, that support is really, really important. So just to finish off, I know you talked about the running groups before. Are you still doing that? You want to tell us anything about that? You're running?
Well, I'm not going to pretend I'm running anymore, because our running group would laugh at me if I said that. The running group still exists,
okay.
And it really morphed into just a community of friends who come together every Tuesday morning. There's, either laps around the oval, a bit of high intensity running training really early on a Tuesday morning. And then Saturday they get together for a long run. I really miss it. But it really has been tricky for me to get to it, because ReLove became pretty all consuming. I really should do more, but Ben's still running, which is great, and he is, running is really a big part of his life. He's a running coach as well as one of his, and he's run a lot of marathons.
Yeah.
I've run 2 marathons, but I can't see myself running a marathon in a hurry. But again, although there was some talk of it at the pub the other night, apparently about signing up for another marathon. The running group really was the place that we started. We were called the Run for Good project. That's where we started. And then along the way, we morphed into ReLove and changed what we were doing. But yeah, Ben still turns up for the running groups, and if he doesn't, I saw him on the WhatsApp group giving them instructions, how many laps of the oval to do, and we've got this beautiful community of people, and they're all been really supportive of what we do and engaged with what we do. Yeah.
And exercise and community is all so good for your mental health as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, running and purpose. I mean, it makes sense. That's where we started, and I think a lot of people, you see a lot of groups out there, purpose, connecting purpose to fitness. Long distance bike rides, swimming, running. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, it's been wonderful listening to your story, Ren, and the work you're doing is so important, and you have so much joy in what you're doing as well, and you're changing so many people's lives. So I really, really commend you in what you're doing, and wish you the very best.
You need to come down. You need to come and volunteer.
Okay,
come and have a day. You'll enjoy it. I know that when people come in the door, it's not a light promise. It's very profoundly. It's a beautiful, moving experience.
I'd love to actually. Well, I'll definitely
I'd love
do
to
that.
have you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So thanks so much. It was a joy to interview you, Ren, and
thank you.
Hopefully,
thank you for having me.
Maybe in a year we'll catch up again, see where you're at.
Yeah, thanks. And if anybody wants to get involved, they could just jump on our website, and there's, you can donate your time, you can donate dollars, you can donate furniture. It's all on the website, and it's pretty easy to sign up for a volunteering day.
Yeah,
we love community getting involved.
Makes such a difference, and we'll leave those details in the show notes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.